Hey, good morning. I'm Dr. Steve Stites, Chief Medical Officer here at the University of Kansas Health System and Executive Vice Chancellor of the University of Kansas Medical Center. Welcome back to Open Mics with Dr. Stites and our monthly edition of my favorite, Show Me the Science. Today we're going to look at the science of brain fuel. Where does your brain get its energy? We explain how ketogenic diets, commonly called the keto diet, and brain energy metabolism could reshape the way we approach Alzheimer's disease. Right now, about 1 out of every 9 people over the age of 65 has Alzheimer's disease. A, that's a lot. B, I guess I'm at risk. I'm over 65 now. The National Institutes of Health predicts that by the year 2060, that number will double if no cure is found. Joining me to discuss this research is Dr. Russ Swerdlow. He's a neurologist and the director of the KU Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, along with Dr. Matthew Taylor, who is an associate professor of dietetics and nutrition at the KU School of Health Professions. They are working on a study called Therapeutics Diet in Alzheimer's Disease, or, wait for it, TDAD. Did I say that okay? TDAD, is that kind of cool? I think it's cool. Does that work?
We try to be cool.
Okay. Yeah, okay, we got work to do here. All right, it's an ongoing randomized study of 80 patients with Alzheimer's. If you and I are the two trying to be cool, we really do have work to do.
Yeah, no,
yeah. Okay, well, in this study, the participants follow a 3-month keto diet or a therapeutic lifestyle change. We will get into that research shortly. We're also joined by Tiffany Romeo. She has experience with eating a keto diet with the goal to lose weight. And before we get deeper into how a ketogenic diet affects the brain, we need to look at what it actually is. The term keto is used a lot when discussing low-carb diets. It can be confusing. We checked in with nutrition researcher Dr. Jessica Keller to explain this diet and what she advises.
We recommend reducing highly processed foods while getting a lot of foods that have lower calories but have the really good stuff: vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, antioxidants. So what that looks like is we recommend 4 to 6 servings of non-starchy vegetables per day, a 1/4 cup of berries, daily intake of nuts and seeds, fatty fish 2 to 3 times per week, a variety of protein sources, preferably lean most of the time, and then choosing fats mostly from healthy sources like avocado, olive oil, nuts and seeds. So getting away from that all saturated fats, all highly processed foods, and getting back to, hey, we're still getting our vitamins and minerals, we're getting all those micronutrients, we're still hitting our fiber goals, we're feeling fuller for longer, and kind of getting that whole foods approach that doesn't need to be lost when following a ketogenic diet.
Wow, that looks awesome. I'm hungry having just looked at the food on that video right there. So Tiffany, what inspired you to start a keto diet?
I saw a picture and I thought, wow, that girl has a shirt like I do. And then I realized that picture, that was me. And that was it. I went keto cold turkey the very next day. I didn't have another carb for a little over a year. And it was a big decision, and it wasn't just a decision that I had to make. My family had to make it as well.
Okay, so are you maybe helping make food for your family, and everybody kind of was all in on the diet? Awesome.
Well,
did it work?
Yeah, everyone wasn't really like all in, but they supported the fact that there are certain things I couldn't have in my cabinets anymore. You know, there was no more Ruffles and Dean's French onion dip. It was, you know, healthier options.
Okay, so did the diet work, and did you lose weight?
I lost about 60 pounds. I would say that it absolutely worked. I can look at any piece of food and know how much carbs is in each item. And I think, well, my whole entire family and friends got tired of me saying, you know how many carbs are in that, don't you? And it worked. I still try to make those healthier decisions.
Well, that is awesome. What about dark chocolate?
So I did something to where I would allow myself to have like the smallest amount, right? But I would savor it. I mean, I would chew it in little pieces. So chocolate really wasn't a big, and back then I really didn't have a sweet tooth, so that really wasn't it. It was chips and saltiness for me.
Okay, we all have that weakness, right? Now, I understand you stopped the diet, is that right, eventually?
Well, yes, and that was a huge mistake on my part because it was 4th of July, and I wanted to go out with everybody else, and I had a hot dog, and then the wheels fell off hard and fast. And I think it was because I did it so hardcore. I didn't allow myself to have any breaks. I just, was barreling down the hatch, and so I feel like if I had given myself some breaks and given myself a little bit more grace, then when I had a hot dog with my friends, it wouldn't have been like, oh my God, I need 4 more of these.
You know what? That is really true. It is hard to be all in on something and then you taste it again. You're like, I want to be back to that. So yeah, that's tough. But still, you lost a lot of weight. That's awesome. Congratulations to you for being able to achieve that. That's a darn big deal. All right, let's get to the science side of this a little bit. There's a pilot study that showed measurable improvements in both the cognition and brain metabolism in Alzheimer's patients who followed a ketogenic diet. Dr. Taylor, Jessica and Tiffany have told us it's not as easy as you might think to achieve a true keto diet. What did you learn about this for your Alzheimer's disease patients? Because these results are pretty good. It makes you think we should all be doing that.
Yeah, I think Jessica did a nice job of setting up what we think about from a ketogenic diet. We really want to focus on eating healthier foods. One of the things I want to point out, though, is that the diet is inherently a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet. Okay. So that can be kind of tough for people. Some people can adhere to it really well, make that adaptation very easily, and others have a harder time giving up carbohydrates because that's the thing that they really want. So we do reduce the carbohydrates a lot, we increase fat, and that's the trick to the diet, is making sure that you do both. Now, to your question about what we saw with Alzheimer's patients, what we found was that those that had more severe Alzheimer's disease had a harder time adapting to the diet.
Sure.
Because there's a lot more burden that comes with that, and then the dementia. And those that had earlier stages of Alzheimer's disease and had strong study partners and strong support, like Tiffany had mentioned, having everybody buy in, that sort of helps with the culture of adapting to some of these behavioral changes. So the diet itself, another point to the diet is that the goal is to make these ketones. That's why we call it the ketogenic diet. It's the alternative fuel to glucose. And so a low-carb diet may not be low enough in carb or high enough in fat to actually make these ketones in your body. So we have to make sure that we get to the proper threshold of low-carb, high-fat in order to do so.
So now, are there hybrid approaches to this? Like, first of all, tell us about how this diet is different than a Mediterranean diet, and could you combine those two things?
Yeah, so I think Jessica laid out that's what we're really trying to do, is combine the idea of a Mediterranean diet, healthy fats, a very healthy eating pattern in general, into the ketogenic diet. But the two diets are very physiologically different. The Mediterranean diet has carbohydrates in it, the ketogenic diet does not. So we're trying to figure out how to take the best of both and make it this optimal diet. And there are some other approaches that we can do to increase ketones as well. There's some supplements that increase ketones without having to change your diet. And so there are some different ways to do so, but this is the way that we're focusing on it from a scientific standpoint.
That is fascinating. So you kind of combine some Mediterranean stuff, some keto stuff, and pretty soon you have really good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully.
I like that.
Yep, that's what we hope for.
Now, Dr. Swarlow, can you explain the science here? What's happening metabolically in a brain with Alzheimer's, and how is this diet going to help all that?
Well, brain and Alzheimer's disease is not burning sugar. And we've known this really since the 1980s from fluorodeoxyglucose PET scans. And
it's a special type of a scan that we use to do what?
Well, it shows where parts of the body are using sugar.
Okay.
So you can use it to show that there's a tumor present, because tumors use a lot of sugar. Or you can use it to show that there's a part of the brain that's failing, because brains use a lot of sugar, and if they're not working, then that sugar's not being used, and you can see that on these scans. So the general idea is that if a brain is not using sugar, might it work better with another fuel in the tank? And that would be ketones.
And so if the brain works on ketones, what's special about ketones?
Well, that they're not glucose. So, and they're generated from fat, and they enter the brain fairly easily, and they make it into neurons, and they can get burned in mitochondria to make energy.
Okay. Now there's a lot of focus on amyloid and, how do I say right, tau proteins or tau, when talking about Alzheimer's. But your research reframes this as an energy crisis. An Alzheimer's brain has difficulty using glucose efficiently. Educate us. Help us understand this.
Yeah, so Dr. Swerdlow touched on this, and I think we have a figure that kind of helps show this. So this figure is exactly what Dr. Swerdlow referred to in this fluorodeoxyglucose PET scan. And what this is showing is where you see all the red and yellow colors in the figure on the normal control brain. It's using a lot of sugar. It's using it well, and this would be what we would expect to see in a healthy brain, using glucose as a fuel source. But as you progress through Alzheimer's, you can see that you have less red in that brain, and it starts to move towards the more cool colors that suggest that glucose is not being used well in the brain. And then this becomes an issue because your brain needs lots of energy. Glucose is that energy source for the brain. Mm-hmm. So when you have functional demand, then you're not meeting that demand in order to do the function that your brain needs to do. So there's been some research, moving on to this next figure, showing that what you see here is this is a brain with Alzheimer's disease, and prior to having ketones in the body, you see that there's not much ketone metabolism going on, just a little bit. That's what we would expect because there's not that many ketones. But if you give that patient ketones, suddenly you start to see these reds and yellows start to pop up, and what that suggests is that brain is using those ketones for a fuel source, that their brain can take it up and use it. So back to Dr. Swerdlow's point, we think that this alternative fuel source might be helping to close the gap on this energy crisis that you see. And what we still don't know, though, at this point is we do know that the ketones get into the brain, but we just don't know if that's really changing the brain energy metabolism in a way that's producing more energy. So my team has a NIH-funded study where I'm working with Dr. Phil Lee, who's an MRI scientist, and we're developing some really novel measures with an MRI, which would help us to better understand what kind of energy output the brain has. And we're going to do a clinical trial with both normal aging and Alzheimer's disease to see if when we get these ketones on board, is it actually changing how well the brain produces energy? Are we really changing the brain energy infrastructure?
Okay, so that's kind of cool, guys. I'm just going to stay. So the study's currently ongoing. How quickly can these changes occur that we saw in the PET scans?
So the ketone metabolism changes immediately. Once we get the ketones in the blood, they get to the brain pretty quickly. And we see some vast improvements.
Can I ask if the patients feel better? Do they notice a difference?
Well, anecdotally, from our pilot study, I can say that we had most of our patients and our patients' families tell us that they felt like they were doing much better.
Okay, and you mentioned if it's a trigger or consequence. Couldn't it be both?
It's probably both, but we think that brain energy metabolism changes where you have this energy crisis. We think that could be one of the more upstream, one of the initial changes in the Alzheimer's disease cascade.
So thank you. So that's really, you've kind of been all over this whole diet and exercise thing for a long time now. Is this sort of fulfilling what you think of that we need to be doing around Alzheimer's?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to treat what the basic problem is in Alzheimer's disease, what's really driving things. And our brain energy metabolism changes as we age, and so this is a nice way to tie in aging with Alzheimer's disease. If we're aging normally, brain energy metabolism is declining, but we're compensated for it. If it declines past a point that we can't compensate anymore, then we've got problems.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing, right? So Alzheimer's is diverse. Are there subgroups that are based on insulin resistance or baseline metabolic disease who seem to benefit from more or less from an intervention like a ketogenic diet?
Well, that's a great question. We don't have enough data at this point to say, is there some group that's going to work, that this may work for better than another group? But as I've thought about this over the years, my general thought is that you probably want to get people at a point where they still have residual mitochondrial activity.
Yeah.
So the engine still has to work if you're going to put more fuel into it.
You've been all over the mitochondrial hypothesis for this for a long time now. You spoke in depth and produced a lot of research surrounding the mitochondrial cascade hypothesis, that it could be the earliest driver of Alzheimer's. How does that fit in to this whole picture?
So, yeah, so I think that that's probably what causes plaques and tangles. You know, we get old, our brains run down, and they become less efficient, and that triggers a lot of changes that we see in Alzheimer's disease.
You know, as we get older, we're more at risk. Why is that?
Well, because our brain energy metabolism becomes less efficient. Our mitochondria become less efficient as we age. You know, mitochondria are one of the hallmarks of aging, and they kind of drive aging. So again, you know, there are a lot of Alzheimer's hypotheses that don't really take this into account, but there's got to be a clock somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And we think this is the clock.
And it may affect not more than the brain, right? Some of that mitochondrial things when they don't quite work as well. So as you look at it across the spectrum, how far are we from having a real intervention to keep these mitochondria juiced up?
Well, I think we're getting there. So the goal of this research is not to have everyone on a ketogenic diet. It's to find out what we can learn from this and then figure out, okay, maybe this part is helping or that part is helping, and then we can drug it. And we've been creating drugs to do that. So, you know, putting ketones in someone's brain, that's putting fuel in the tank, but you still have to turn on the engine.
Yeah.
So we've come up with drugs that not only provide the fuel, but also will turn the engine on.
So this is an amazing time to be in science because we're learning so much so fast, and things are pretty remarkable. And your team has just done this amazing job at helping us get a better understanding of Alzheimer's. What's the biggest stumbling block to getting to the answer? What's getting in our way?
Yeah, just getting out of the way of our data and understanding what we're seeing. But you know, a lot of our experiments, a lot of the things that we do are looking at things within a very narrow context.
Yeah.
And you know, we're getting the tools now that we can see things in a much broader context. And you know, the problems are often not with the experiments or the data. It's how we interpret the data. And you know, we just have to be smart about that.
So what's your favorite fat, ketogenic or ketogenic food source?
Man, Steve, you know, I got to tell you, I'm not very good at this. I just like to eat. And
you're supposed to say, well, I got it, it's salmon.
Yeah, no, I'm not really much of a fish guy. I mean, you know, bacon and eggs and cheese is good for me.
I love that too. That's so good, but
You really liked that ketogenic ice cream at that conference at one time.
Oh, yeah. Remember that? I ate enough to make myself sick. I didn't have to eat for 3 days.
Oh, excellent. That's some really good brain health there. So what was your favorite ketogenic diet?
Oh,
Or food source?
Yeah, so during that study, I actually followed it. I followed the diet pretty much the whole 3 years we were doing that study. I like a lot of foods with fat in them. I would probably have to say, I don't know, maybe avocados. I've ate a lot of those.
Salmon and avocado. I love salmon. I love avocados. They're so good. So anyway, all right. Well, we're here to answer your questions. Not just my questions that I have for these guys. I'm so fascinated by this. Send them in using the info on your screen. That includes the chat on YouTube or Facebook or emailing the Medical News Network. Let's check in with Doc Hawkeye. All right, Hawkeye, did you bring your lunch today? Thanksgiving leftovers, our ketogenic diet? What'd you do?
I mean, I need the ketogenic diet now, but unfortunately I'm not as good at doing that. But
okay, now I know Thanksgiving leftovers probably getting a little long in the tooth in the refrigerator. Any advice about that? And then I think you and I want to hit on a CDC topic for just a minute.
yeah, I think for just kind of food health, probably what everybody is dealing with now, if you had people over to the house or if you brought food home, number one, hopefully when you did eat with family and friends, that food was not sitting out on the table or the shelf or the stove for any long amount of time, and it either went right into the freezer or into the refrigerator for cool storing. This helps decrease the chance of bacteria growing and getting into that food as well. Typically, though, you only want to keep that food for about 3 or 4 days after Thanksgiving, and then it's probably time to pitch it just to be safe.
Yeah, pretty much makes sense. I'm going to remind my wife of that. She said, "Do you want the turkey left over from Thanksgiving?" No, I'm done now. Thank you. Okay, so talk a little bit about some of the CDC news about vaccination again. It's probably not something you and I are going to agree with, huh?
Yeah, right. No, probably not. Probably not. You know, this did come just before Thanksgiving. I'm glad you brought it up. Now, on the official CDC webpage, they did state that the link between vaccines and autism cannot be ruled out. And, you know, this is just misinformation. This continues to be an assault on individual health, public health, and really science and medicine. And of course, we're doing the show on Show Me the Science. And we'd just like to back that statement up. Like, certainly we don't agree with that. Certainly, you know, the medical center, the health system, you know, talked with many of our colleagues over different specialties. They continue to not believe that or have any agreement with that statement as well. I'd just like to back that up with the statement by the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, who issued a statement quite quickly after the CDC had changed their webpage. Basically, she said, since 1988, independent researchers across 7 countries conducted more than 40 high-quality studies involving, get this, over 5.6 million people, with the acute conclusion, that it is clear and unambiguous there is no link between vaccines and autism. So in addition, she said, repeating this harmful myth is misinformed or intentionally trying to mislead patients. In fact, even the Autism Science Foundation has said no environmental factor has been better studied as a potential cause of autism than vaccines. So I think with all of the medical and science groups and even the Autism Science Foundation saying this and disagreeing with the fact that vaccines cause autism, we can continue to say that vaccines are safe and effective, and there is no link between vaccines and autism.
And autism is probably more than just one disease. It's a spectrum of things.
It is.
It existed long before vaccination did. So it's a little hard to think that vaccines caused autism or that Tylenol caused autism, because these things all predated that.
Absolutely.
So one other thought, people maybe came back from holiday gatherings and may have a cough or cold. When should they check for COVID? And we know it takes about 5 to 10 days to get over a cold, but when do you start having to think about COVID and stuff like that? When do you test?
Yeah, and I think we should be thinking about it. I think that is a great point. I just looked at our latest data from about a week ago. So we do have now over 10 patients in the hospital that are diagnosed with COVID. We have 1 admission with influenza, but those numbers are going to be increasing, those influenza and COVID numbers, but also we need to include RSV. So what I would say that if you start getting symptoms, especially if you're high risk, that it is very important to test early. We now have home tests that you can buy at the local commercial pharmacies. They test for both influenza A and B, but also COVID, all in one test. So it's important to test early. That way, if you are positive, you can get on treatment. Otherwise, it is vitally important to remember that if you're sick, you really shouldn't be going to work or other places where you could put people at risk, especially people who may be more at high risk of severe disease and hospitalization. So test early. And then, of course, if you do test negative on the first time for COVID or influenza, it is important to probably test the next day as well, at least 2 to 3 times serially. It will be important. But if those are all negative, it is probably just a common cough and cold. We know that that is going around a lot, especially things like rhinovirus, metapneumovirus. Those are common cough and cold viruses. It's important to have symptomatic treatment. So get a lot of rest, get nutrition. If you need Tylenol or ibuprofen to help with the aches and also the fever, and then also stay hydrated. And those are going to be the most important things for getting you better quickly.
I like that plan, and probably a ketogenic diet is going to make it better. I don't know. Just kidding. Just messed with you guys a little bit. All right. Alexis Del Cid is watching for questions from our community. Alexis Del Cid, what you got?
Good morning. Gene Reardon has a question. He wants to know what supplements increase ketones.
Supplements.
What supplements
increase ketones? Can you get there through supplements? I think is kind of the question.
There are things that will boost your ketone levels without a ketogenic diet. Medium chain triglyceride oil will can boost your ketone level. There are products that you can purchase, like ketone salts or ketone esters, that can boost one's ketone body levels.
So does this help your cooking at all?
No, not really. You take these, you take those alone, and what they do is they prevent you from having to change your diet drastically in order to make ketones. But it's a very acute effect. It lasts a short time, whereas with a diet, you have a longer, more sustained ketosis.
Yeah, you're doing it all throughout the day. I get that. That makes sense. All right, Alexis.
What foods, or where would you get triglyceride oil?
You can actually find it at Walmart or Amazon. And,
CVS, Whole Foods.
Okay.
It's all grocery stores often contain
pretty
it.
widely available.
We used to have cystic fibrosis patients because that's one of their biggest deficits is medium chain triglycerides, and we used to try and get them to eat a lot of that, and yeah, it's not always the most palatable thing.
Joellen has a question. She would like to know if you could just explain what is mitochondria and what does it do?
That's a great question. Okay, Mr. Research Guy on mitochondria.
Mitochondria, okay. So we learned in high school that they are the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
So they are these structures within cells, and they're really interesting. They're basically bacteria that coexist within our cells, and they...
Wait, you saying I got bacteria inside my cells?
Absolutely.
Holy cow.
Absolutely, yeah.
Explain yourself here, Swordlow.
Well, you know, there was a time a few billion years ago when a cell engulfed another cell, a bacteria, and to digest that bacteria and said, you know what, I can do better keeping this bacteria inside of me than in digesting it. And that set off a couple of billion years of evolution in which these bacteria that had been engulfed became parts of the cells. And you have this exchange of genetic information with genes moving from these bacteria into the nucleus of cells. But what you end up with is basically these little spaceships within cells that float around, and they're little power plants, and they make the energy that our cells need.
Wow, so we're sort of codependent, right?
Absolutely.
I like that. Live long and prosper. All right.
Jeremy Yenser has a question. He wants to know if the shakeup of using ketones instead of glucose has a different or more pronounced effect on diabetics.
Well, there is something to be concerned about from a ketone perspective with type 1 diabetes. There's a condition known as ketoacidosis, and that's what people there's people that often affiliate the ketogenic diet with ketoacidosis, and the ketogenic diet and ketoacidosis are actually two very different situations. The ketoacidosis situation is having high ketone levels in the presence of glucose that's also not getting into the cells due to insulin issues. And so you keep producing more and more and more and more ketones, and ketones are acidic. And if you have too many of them, they can become detrimental and cause some real problems. The ketogenic diet does not cause ketones to go up to that level. In our body, on a ketogenic diet is really good at buffering out the acidity of the ketones. So the concerns for a diabetic with a ketogenic diet is probably not, it's not going to reach the level of ketoacidosis. But I think we do need to be very conservative about how we approach using the ketogenic diet. I think it should be done under supervision, especially with a registered dietitian, just to make sure that it's the correct choice for people that have any types of concerns about that.
You know, it's interesting because when people get diabetic ketoacidosis, they have a very high glucose and they have a very high ketone level, and there's a lot of different kinds of ketones, and it is an insulin deficiency question. And so when people take insulin, they can bring their glucose down, which stops their body from generating so many ketones, and that's different than the ketogenic diet when you're eating it, because to your point. And also just say the ketogenic diet doesn't say you can't have any glucose, it just says you got to eat a lot more ketones and reduce, especially that processed glucose.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
We have two more questions and one comment. Betsy Tidro wants to share, she says, thank you for sharing evidence-based information. That's from Betsy.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I said it wrong. I said, yes, that is accurate.
And Jesse has a question for Tiffany. Tiffany, Jesse wants to know if there's anything you miss about the keto diet, and what are the main things you would tell a friend before starting the diet?
I guess what I miss about it was the inflammation. So I feel like I didn't have as much inflammation. And so like things just didn't hurt on my body. You know, I could go like this without it, you know, hurting. And I really felt like that helped. But what I would tell people is make a list of your absolute favorite foods and really look at what could be considered possibly you know, something that you could eat on keto, and then something that you have to take away, and you kind of have to see what the benefits are. You know, is it going to make you you know, super hyper focused on not eating something because you need to switch your mind from being I can't have this to I get to have this. You get to have all the cheese you want. You get to have all those things versus what you can't have.
I like that. And so do you still kind of mix it today? Do you mix some ketogenic diet principles, some Mediterranean diet principles, and still kind of stay away from hot dogs and potato chips and sour cream?
Yes. Well, I still use Greek yogurt and sour cream always. That's something I learned there. But I do what I do is called sloppy keto. And that's just really taking a lot of effort. And, well, you know, I mean, it's like if I'm going to make a choice, well, I'm going to try my best to make the choice that is more, that has the lower carbs, because I know how it affected my body. I know how I felt when I was doing it. And so, you know, any little thing I can, you know, that would be great. Am I hardcore? No. But definitely, sloppy keto, or lazy keto, it's also called.
I love sloppy keto. I think we're trademarking that right now. You're going to get it. You're going to get the credit. Sloppy keto. I think that's awesome.
I want to open a restaurant and call it sloppy
keto. I'm with you. We can be our cook, by chance between you and Tiffany. You guys got to prepare the food. We'll just sit down around and talk about it. How's that?
I think we have that.
And we'll quote Star Trek. It'll be great for your customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This has been a great discussion. I want to hear final thoughts from our guests today. Tiffany, first of all, thank you for being on the program. That's awesome. And by the way, I'm right there with you. When I eat better, my joints don't hurt. And if I have too much gluten and all that other bad stuff, man, they hurt. So I'm right there with you. All right. Final thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, I would just say, you know, from what I've learned on this show, so dementia does run in my family. And so if that is something in the back of my mind that I can, you know, give as a little nudge to maybe eat better and eat more of a keto diet, then I think that's a huge push for me.
All right, I do like that. And then we asked Jessica what she wants our viewers to take away from today.
We're learning more and more, it seems, every day. A new study is coming out showing a new population that could potentially benefit from the use of a therapeutic ketogenic diet. So I think it's important to keep our eye on the prize of finding how personalized nutrition can work across populations. And it's not going to be this one dietary pattern is the best. That's just not the way that nutrition works. So it's important to understand that we're all different and that these tools can be beneficial for some and not others.
That's a great answer. All right, Dr. Taylor, final thoughts.
I really like Dr. Keller's answer. I will say that if you are considering doing a ketogenic diet, I think it is smart to discuss with a registered dietitian. One of the things that we know about keto is that there are people that can have adverse cholesterol responses to it. And so just keeping an eye out for that would be a good thing, just so you know if you're the type of person that has increased cholesterol. Some do not, so something good to keep an eye out for, though.
Yeah, that sounds good. Dr. Swerdlow?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really enjoyed this, and it's fun hearing about this. And of course, I'm always impressed by your grasp of Star Trek.
Let's do it. I may have generations of learning there, so to speak. Yeah. All right. I want to bring back, before we go today, Alexis Delced. Alexis, you have a great program on tomorrow's All Things Heart. Talk a little bit about that, and then I have a final comment.
It is a fascinating story, Dr. Stites, and I think so many people are going to be interested by this because it's sort of about heartburn, and we know heartburn is huge during the holidays. A college senior thought he had heartburn, but the truth was it was tearing him apart from the inside, literally. Just weeks before graduation, imagine this. He opens his eyes. He's in a different city with a diagnosis he never saw coming in the hospital. Such a wild story. The rare life-threatening condition doctors discovered that was not heartburn, and the warning signs that could save your life. That's tomorrow on All Things Heart.
I think I want to watch. You know, here's what I know. Life is a great balance, and we have to decide what we want out of our lives and how we want to go about things. And, you know, I kind of like a little dark chocolate and peanut butter. It's pretty darn good. I try to eat a really balanced diet. It's a little like what you had to do in the middle of COVID. You had to take all of the information, put it inside your own life and say, how can I manage this? And here are the risks if I follow this path, and here are the risks if I follow this path. And you make a path that's right for you. Whether it's sloppy ketogenic diet, I love that, or it's watching a lot of Star Trek, or maybe it can even be both. All right, folks, thanks everyone for watching and listening today. Remember, this combination of faith, hope, and science, that's not sloppy ketogenic diet. That is a powerful tonic for all of our times. We'll see you soon.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now everywhere podcasts are available.